Chapter 1: Confidence versus Ego. Ego in trading does not look emotional. It doesn't look loud. It doesn't look reckless. It doesn't look like someone smashing the keyboard. It looks composed. It sounds like, I understand this market. I've seen this set up 100 times. This one is obvious. That's why it's dangerous. Confidence says, I trust my process. Ego says, I trust my interpretation. The difference is microscopic in the moment, massive over time. Confidence stays inside predefined rules. Ego edits rules in real time. Confidence accepts invalidation. Ego resists it. Confidence has nothing to prove. Ego needs to be right. In trading, being right feels good. Being disciplined feels neutral. That's the trap. The brain associates certainty with safety. So when you feel certain, you feel powerful. But markets are probabilistic environments. Certainty is artificial. When ego steps in, you begin to blur that line. You stop waiting for full confirmation. You anticipate. You size slightly heavier. You exit slightly later. Not because you're reckless, because you feel sharp. The worst mistakes don't happen when you're emotional. They happen when you feel in control. That's ego hiding behind composure. And it rarely destroys you instantly. It erodes you slowly. Chapter 2: How Ego Rewires Your Risk Perception. After a string of wins, your nervous system recalibrates. You don't notice it consciously, but your perception of risk shifts. What used to feel risky now feels manageable. What used to require confirmation now feels obvious. This is not growth. This is adaptation to short-term success. The brain starts forming a narrative. I'm reading flow better. I understand context deeper. I can anticipate moves. And sometimes you can. But anticipation without structure is gambling dressed professionally. The more often you win while bending rules, the more your brain learns. Deviation is rewarded. That's the most dangerous reinforcement loop in trading. Because discipline does not collapse when you lose. It collapses when you win incorrectly. If you break your entry rule and still profit, you just trained yourself to distrust your system. If you size up impulsively and the trade works, you just validated impulsivity. Ego does not scream. It normalizes shortcuts. Over time, your baseline changes. Your average risk slightly increases. Your patience slightly decreases. Your tolerance for ambiguity shrinks. You start forcing clarity where none exists. You interpret noise as structure. You take partial confirmations as full signals. You feel urgency where there is none, and you rationalize it beautifully. You tell yourself, this is intuition. This is experience. I'm adapting. Adaptation in trading is dangerous if it is reactive. Markets require consistency. Ego requires stimulation. Stimulation comes from feeling ahead, but markets do not reward feeling ahead. They reward following predefined criteria regardless of emotional state. Ego shifts your decision-making from rule-based to identity-based. Instead of asking, does this meet my criteria? You begin asking, do I believe this will work? That shift is subtle. It feels mature. It sounds analytical, but it moves control from the system to your self-image. And once your self-image enters execution, objectivity drops. Losses now feel personal. Missed trades feel insulting. Invalidation feels unfair. That emotional friction leads to interference. You exit early to protect pride. You re-enter impulsively to prove a point. You hold losers to avoid admitting error. Ego turns probabilities into battles. And trading is not a battlefield. It's a distribution curve. If your identity is attached to each outcome, variance will destabilize you. Professionals detach outcome from identity. They win and feel neutral. They lose and feel neutral, not because they're robots, because their self-worth is not tied to the trade. Ego ties self-worth to performance. Process ties performance to repetition. One is fragile, one compounds. If you cannot separate execution from ego validation, You will oscillate between overconfidence and hesitation. That oscillation is expensive. Chapter 3: When Confidence Turns into Interference. Here's how you know ego has taken control. You stop waiting, not dramatically, just slightly. You enter early to get a better price. You move stops to give it room. You add to losers because structure is still valid. Each adjustment feels intelligent, but they share one trait. They were not planned in advance. When confidence is real, behavior is predictable. When ego is active, behavior becomes adaptive in real time. Adaptation feels sharp, but under stress, it collapses. You also begin to over-explain trades. You defend them internally. You justify them after execution. When you're aligned, you don't need to argue with yourself. Ego debates, process executes. Another signal: you feel tension when flat. If you feel incomplete without exposure, ego is seeking relevance. The market does not owe you action, but ego hates being inactive, so you insert yourself. And that insertion increases frequency. Increased frequency increases emotional load. Emotional load reduces clarity. Now you're trading more, thinking worse, reacting faster, and telling yourself it's skill until variance corrects you. Ego builds during winning streaks. It detonates during drawdowns. Confidence remains stable across both. If your emotional state expands and contracts with performance, ego is involved. That volatility will show up in your equity curve. Chapter 4: The Discipline That Kills Ego. Understanding ego is useless if you don't structurally restrict it. Awareness does not stop deviation. Structure does. You need friction between impulse and execution, not motivation, not self-talk, not emotional promises. Friction. Professionals reduce discretionary space during execution. They define exact entry conditions, exact invalidation, exact risk per trade, exact daily loss limit. And once defined, they do not negotiate. Ego thrives in gray areas, so eliminate gray areas. If entry criteria are incomplete, no trade. If confirmation is partial, no trade. If risk exceeds predefined size, no trade. Your brain will argue. It will say, "This one is different. Conditions are slightly adjusted. The market evolved." Your job is not to out-argue your brain. Your job is to obey structure. Because structure does not feel good. It feels restrictive. And that's the point. If your system allows emotional reinterpretation mid-trade, ego will hijack it. So here's the rule. If you break one predefined rule during a trade, you stop trading for the day. Immediately. No exceptions. No revenge. No one more to make it back. No justification. Break structure. Lose access. This rule forces awareness. It introduces consequence. It retrains the nervous system. Discipline without consequence is optional. Discipline with consequence becomes behavior. Ego wants freedom. Professionals build constraints. The market rewards the constrained. Because consistency compounds. And ego fluctuates. You don't defeat ego by becoming humble. You defeat it by becoming structured. Confidence survives inside rules. Ego suffocates inside them. If you want long-term ROE, you don't strengthen ego. You narrow its options. That's the difference between trading as identity and trading as execution. One feels powerful, the other builds capital. Only one lasts.